Good morning. You know, when I was in high school, I was never popular. And when I started my own business, I decided it's going to be really expensive to be popular. And it has been.
Silence all cell phones.
All right, does anybody know this sound? Did you hear it? All right. My name is Dan Hakes. I have a farmer's insurance office. I've been here for 22 years. I want to start by introducing my staff. They are the heart and soul of what happens for your clients when you send them our way. If it goes good, it's because of them. So Julie and Mandy, they are licensed and can do more than I can do, quite frankly. And so I appreciate them. I want to just say thank you to everyone in this room. My success over the years has been because of partnerships with you and because you let me serve you. And so I really want to say thank you. As I get older, I didn't have it. My daughter-in-law just had our first grandbaby. So it starts to make you think, right? And it's made me reflect and realize how blessed I've been because of you all in this room. I walk into a room like this and I feel like I'm with family, because everybody in this room treats each other like family. And I think that's special, and I appreciate that. I want to just say about insurance, do you realize the tunnel fire was 13 months ago? We have a client who's rebuilding. She's about 30% done. Is all in 13 months because snow and everything else that we've gone through. Insurance is not what it used to be. I ask you that if you're going to work with clients, you make sure to start them down the insurance path early. It takes us a lot more work to find policies, especially in outlying areas or out of town. And sometimes we don't find it, and we'll refer you to somebody else. So if we can help you, we want to help you. And to give you a thank you, I have 4 Harkins movie passes here. The summer always has good movies, right? I'm going to give this to someone who can sing the farmer's jingle for me.
We are farmers.
There you go. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Next up, I hear Rick Lopez has some items to discuss. Come on up.
Thank you, Michelle. Boy, what a great crowd we have today for this luncheon. I'm just so grateful to all of you for taking time out of your day to come to this important luncheon. I want to talk to you a little bit about RAPAC. I promise not to take too much time. First of all, can I, by a show of hands, can I see how many of you saw the videos that Jessica, Cody Bauer, Gary Nelson, and I produced regarding RAPAC? Could you raise your hands if you saw those videos? So we got about half a dozen people who saw them. Well, that's good to know.
Just one's gone out.
What's that?
Only Cody's has gone out so far.
Oh, Cody's is the only one that's gone out. Well, maybe that's why. Okay. I also want to remind all of you about the silent auction that's coming up in June, later in the month of June. There is still time for any of you who wish to make a donation to that silent auction to do so, to get your broker to do so, or if you are an affiliate and you want to participate in the silent auction, by all means, we would love to see any items that you want to submit for that purpose. And I hope that all of you will take a chance to participate in that silent auction. RAPAC does a great deal for all of us every single day. And I think it's important for us to recognize exactly how important and valuable RAPAC is to your business. Thank you so much.
If you have an open chair next to you, can you raise your hand? Jerry looks lost.
All right. Thank you, Rick. All right, does anybody have any introductions from their brokerages or any announcements? Tad.
Sorry, I don't have an introduction, but I have something super cool to talk about. On your tables, you will see a flyer for the Northern Arizona Housing Fund. They gave me just a couple of minutes to talk about it. If you guys don't know what that is, it's a local fund that we partnered with the Arizona Community Foundation of Flagstaff to form. The coolest part about it is during the escrow process, the listing agent, the seller's agent, the buyer's agent, buyer seller themselves can actually make a donation to the fund directly through the escrow process, just with an additional commission instruction that you send out to your title company. We started it in 2020, which was fantastic timing. So this might be the first time you've gotten to hear about it. But even despite that, we've raised over $200,000 in Northern Arizona. We've been able to give away 4 competitive grants. We have the way it works is you donate into this fund, and then ACF has a committee that offers a competitive grant cycle to local nonprofits that deal in housing. They can all apply for grants, and then we have a committee that determines who gets the grant awards. We've given 4 total away at $25,000 each to some really cool organizations like Flag Shelter Services, Housing Solutions of Northern Arizona. You might not know about them, but there's a organization called Red Feather Development that rehabs homes on the reservation that are just unsafe and dilapidated, helps with all of that as well. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. You can get your form from any of the title companies. We have it on nazrealtor.com. It's in Transaction Desk. It's in SkySlope. I will tie one to a pigeon leg and send it your way if you need one, whatever you need. Really quick about title companies too, I just wanted to say a shout out to Pioneer Title is matching every donation made through escrow, which is fantastic. Clear Title is making a flat $25 donation through every transaction period, and Lawyers Title donated $1,500 and dedicated every year they're going to donate $1,500 to this fund, which is fantastic. It's added up to tens and tens of thousands and thousands of dollars and helped numerous people. Super easy to do. Brokers, if you're in the room, I would love to get a chance to talk to your offices if they would like more detail, or I have a really cool PowerPoint. There's a video that'll tug at your heartstrings. It's fantastic. See me after or contact me. That's it. Yes, NAR so generously has also pledged to match the first $5,000 of donations this year. So, yes. So if you do make a donation with the escrow form, just send a copy off to Judy. We're keeping a tally, and it'll get matched and double your power. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tad. Everybody, please donate. That's such an awesome program that we have for our community. Next up, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you our Real Estate Commissioner, Susan Nicolson. Come on up. Short. Okay.
Hi, thank you so much for having me come up here. I see a lot of familiar faces, but I see a lot of new faces. So for those of you who do not know me yet, I came from you guys. I was a realtor. So I have 28 years of experience in the real estate industry. I started in timeshare, where I opened up international markets for Marriott. So I was assigned to the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. I opened up offices in Europe, got to do a wonderful stint opening a resort in Marbella. And then I moved out here after I married an America West pilot, and we had our first child together, and I decided I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but I failed miserably at that. That is a much harder job than it gets the billing for. And so then I took my license and I turned it into residential. I practiced residential real estate for over 20 years and opened my own brokerage in 2018. I opened a real estate school. I was qualified to teach in every category of real estate continuing education. I was qualified to teach many of the national designations and certifications that come out your ABR and your PSAs and all of those good fun things that make better practitioners. And it's a passion of mine. So in December, I received a phone call from Arizona Realtors, and it was Matt Conarelli. He had heard that Governor Hobbs wanted a practitioner to take the seat of commissioner at the Department of Real Estate, and Arizona Association of Realtors handed over, I believe, quite a number of names to the transition team, and I was one of them that was asked to throw a resume into the pot to apply. I'll be honest, I didn't think I really would get the job. I'm a registered Republican, and the third question on the questionnaire was like, what's your political party? And I was like, oh, I'm so out. This is not going to happen. So I went into my interview opportunity with the governor's staff and the transition team with nothing to lose, is how I felt. I thought, there's so much opportunity at the Department of Real Estate, and here's my one chance to tell the people who could possibly do something about it what they could do for this industry. And what I communicated was there's great opportunity for increased transparency, that the vast majority of licensees are small business owners that are trying to run successful small businesses, abide by the law, be in regulatory compliance, and if they know how to do that, and if we are clear as a Department of Real Estate, then they're going to meet that bar, they're going to meet that mark. But we're too vague and we're too generalized, and it is a guessing game of exactly what they need to do to be in statutory compliance, and that should be unacceptable for public service. I complained about the accessibility of the department. You should be able to reach the Department of Real Estate by telephone, the numbers seem to be hidden. It's a hard phone number to find, or it was. It's not anymore. And there were many other things. I talked about federal fair housing and how Arizona ranks 4 out of 10 on the national standard for federal fair housing and our opportunities to do better there. I understand there were some changes at your legislative meetings in NAR about fair housing education, and I have every intention of having the Department of Real Estate match those new nationally identified standards for fair housing training. So we're going to make it a little easier on you. So if you're getting your fair housing continuing education credits, you're going to meet your NAR standards as well. And it was a wonderful interview. I walked out feeling really good and really certain I wouldn't get the job. So it was very much a surprise 10 days later when Governor Hobbs called me and offered me the position as commissioner for the Department of Real Estate. And what I was told by the governor was, you are in my cabinet to make a difference for the people of Arizona. Go in there and do what's right and be bold. You don't have to work in the margins. We've got your back. And so that's what I've done. So I'm going to share some updates with you guys now that you know where I came from. I was asked to talk about public reports. So just real briefly, if you are representing a seller who has 6 or more lots in a given subdivision, then they need to have a public report in order to sell or lease that land. So the public report comes first before you advertise the land for sale, or your seller will be in violation of Title 32, Chapter 20. So we don't want that to happen. Make sure that they get a public report. The department's turnaround time for a public report on a complete submission is less than 5 days. So we are determined not to hold up business. Now, I will say you may need some help getting your water certificate and your Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. And I've communicated to Development Services that where our customers are running into hiccups to please let me know, because I have this phone list of all the other directors and I will call them and let them know that we're holding up business in Arizona. So we're committed to help. And if you feel that your seller should have an exception to Title 32, Chapter 20 in the Development Services world on the public report, there are opportunities to apply for exceptions. We do look at them individually, and what we're going to measure is the risk to the public. So we may ask for some additional things in that sales contract, additional disclosures, but there have been developments that we have allowed to go ahead and proceed with sale without the full completion of their public report yet, knowing what the delays are. So The department will try to work with you. We will never sacrifice the security of the public, but we'll try to work with you and your developers and your clients as much as possible. Owner agent disclosure was another thing that I was asked to discuss today. So when you put owner agent into your private remarks in your MLS listing, and then that goes out to Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com and all of the other places on the internet, it doesn't show because it is private. It is not even intended to be shared with the client. It's supposed to be realtor to realtor at private, and then semi-private is the one where you can go ahead and share that information with your client. So please choose the right field. It's important that in all of your advertising, you're making the disclosures. That is certainly the most risk-adverse way for you to have your real estate practice. Just throw it into the public remarks and make sure that you're beyond reproach of somebody making a claim against you that you had misleading advertising is what the statute reads. So don't fall victim to that. Changes. Lots of changes have come down. I've been in the seat of commissioner for about 90 days now. I've made some changes to education. When you have brokerage meetings and a broker like Gary Nelson is going to take apart the contract for you over the next hour because there have been some changes, I would very much like for licensees to show up in person, learn from the amazing brokers that are out there, and get CE credit for it. So we now have 1 credit options of continuing education. 50 minutes of good, solid education that benefits the public. If you go and attend, we're going to give you credit for it. You can get 1 credit hour, 2 credit hour, 4 credit hour. I really don't care. I just care about the quality of the education being delivered. I also care about your time. I know that it's a lot easier for you to come out and do something for an hour than it is for you to come out and do something for 3 hours. It's a lot easier to work in 1 hour intervals into a busy real estate practitioner's day. I wanted to be cognizant to that and open things up where the statutes didn't prohibit me from doing so. We are also going to have some IT changes over the next 9 months to 3 years at the department, kind of progressively going through stages. One of the things that you're going to be able to do is rate your continuing education courses and instructors. We very much care about quality education, so we're going to ask you simply 3 questions while you're putting your CE into our system, and those results are going to go to school administrators so that school administrators can know how their instructors are doing and how their courses are performing, and they're going to come to the department, and that's how I'm going to know who to send my monitors out to. Not my volunteer monitors, the actual staff monitors, to make sure that we have quality education. And the reason it'll be staff and not a volunteer is I will revoke certificates if it is horrible education. We're going to clean that up for you. I've taken too many of those courses myself over the last 20 years, so I know. I also understand that everybody's at a different stage of their real estate career, and you have different needs of what you hope to obtain from continuing education. If you come into a class that's too much at a high level, you're lost. If you're at a high level and you're a broker and you've been doing this for 20 years and you go into a class that's Agency 101, you want to stab your eyeballs out of your eyes. So we want to help you there too. We're going to have that IT change done, and you'll be able to search by category. Is this beginner, intermediate, or advanced, so that you can get the highest quality education for where you're at in your real estate career. And then there are form revisions. So if any of you are educators, yesterday we released the new ED 102 form, which is how you register a new course at the Department of Real Estate. We are going through every single form we have at the Department of Real Estate, and we're cutting out anything that we do not need by statute or that we collect in order to protect the public. So that 26-page form was reduced to 2 pages plus an addendum, and the addendum is 2 pages. It's now 4 pages. It's very simple. It'll save staff time and not going back and forth because you missed a checkbox. It'll save you time and us only collecting the information that we truly need in order to regulate. So next one is a little bit heavier. Joint venture agreements between realtors, title companies, lenders, home warranty companies, and licensees, teams, brokerages, affiliated business arrangements, and sometimes just under the table nonsense. So when the CFPB came out, it seemed like everybody snapped in and everybody was really, really well behaved. And now there's this atmosphere of they'll never catch us. So licensees, we are aware. We work cooperatively together. The Department of Insurance and Financial Institutions are my next door neighbors on the same floor in the same building, and I have lunch with Director Richardson on a regular basis. And we share information. And we also share the same Attorney General. Lynette Evans is the Attorney General that is assigned to both real estate and the Department of Insurance and Financial Institutions. So recently, we received a consent order for a RESPA violation, and it gave us an opportunity to look at joint venture agreements and find out what the feds thought was not okay. And in going through RESPA, what the Fed found was these joint venture agreements, they called them bogus companies because it did not meet the mark the law calls for a bona fide company. So the structure of the one that we have had the opportunity to dissect was a joint venture that was created where the title insurance company owned a 20% ownership and the licensees owned an 80% ownership. Licensees paid a $500 buy-in. The licensees didn't do any management activity, none. They just received quarterly dividends based off of the amount of title insurance business they sent through the joint venture. The joint venture company did not market to the public to try and sell title insurance anywhere else. It was all self-sustaining, and the federal government found that disclosure was improper, that the public had no idea that this was going on and that the licensees involved were receiving money for things other than their real estate services. The fine that was assessed was $207,000, and the licensees lost their licenses. So, what is your appetite for risk? In working cooperatively with the Attorney General's office and the Department of Insurance and Financial Institutions, later this year, the Department of Real Estate will be adding joint venture agreements to our audit checklist. We'll use our power to subpoena, and anywhere where we suspect there's a joint venture agreement, we're going to want to see those agreements, and it's going to go through the Arizona revised statutes and the Attorney General and the Consumer Fraud Division, and then it's going to go up to the federal government. So please, licensees, is it really worth it? You can make a handsome, wonderful living abiding by the law and not partaking in these schemes that are designed to entice you and create business. We're also aware that not all of it is done through joint venture agreements. And so I'll just be really, really clear. It is never, ever, ever, ever okay for you to send an invoice to a title insurance company for appearing on a commercial or anything like that that you don't actually do and then receive a check from them. And by the way, those checks are registered in their P&Ls and it's all very visible to the agencies that are regulating. So we are aware that there is an unfair and unlevel playing field happening in the world right now between powerful teams, top producing agents, title insurance companies, lenders, et cetera, and we will be investigating it, and there is a high level of cooperation in interagency departments. So, okay, there's that. That was heavy, sorry. We're gonna go into rentals, but like tell your friends, right? Probably not people in this room because it's usually the best of the best that show up to these things. But if you know people that are doing it, now would be a good time for them to find an exit strategy in that and to just stop. Rentals. If you run a property management company, it is not ever going to be okay for you to advertise a set amount of rent, but then have other unnegotiable monthly fees that are not disclosed prior to a non-refundable earnest deposit being collected. Disclosure of anything like a material fact of who has to, if somebody can only stay for 3 weeks before they have to pay money to apply to be on the lease, disclose that before you take a non-refundable deposit. If you have an administrative fee or you have a transaction fee or something that's other than your TPT tax, that is non-negotiable. 3% of the monthly rent has to be paid as an admin fee on a monthly basis, incorporated into the rent and marketed at the price that the person is going to have to pay. And please, 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 if you have an assistive animal, know the fair housing laws. The Civil Rights Division of the Attorney General's Office is committed to investigate all instances that we refer over to them, and discrimination against people with disabilities by saying things like, your cleaning deposit doesn't apply to your assistive animal, and we're going to be able to take any deductions for cleanings that are regarding your assistive animal directly out of the security deposit, are a clear violation of federal fair housing laws, and will be referred to the correct authority. And then after that goes through due process, we'll come back to the Department of Real Estate, where we will then address your license. So please don't do that. And if you know people that are, please help them find the right path. Deed fraud. Just this week alone, the department has now seen 5 cases of deed fraud. To say that it is growing at an exponential rate in Arizona would be an understatement. It's almost like somebody is broadcasting on the dark web, hey, go to Arizona to commit deed fraud. So we very, very much need the cooperation and help of the licensees at the Department of Real Estate. If you find out that you have a listing and the client that you're working with is not the actual owner of that property and you've been duped, I'm sorry, because that's your time and your money and your marketing dollars. But before you just cancel the listing and tell them to go on their way, expletive, we've got to filter through those nowadays. Before you do that, contact the Department of Real Estate, because the Consumer Fraud Division of the Attorney General's Office is investigating. And it does appear to be an organized crime. It does appear to be crime that's crossing state lines. These are sophisticated criminals who have false identification. So a couple of things that we've identified at the department that you could do to protect the public is, just like when you go to a landfill and you need to show your ID and your water bill, ask for a second form of identification. If you don't know the seller, if it's a lead that came to you through a lead source, they are using lead sources as well. If it's something that comes to you and you don't know that, hey, yeah, I know Gary Nelson owns that land, right? I sold it to him 4 years ago. If it's not that kind of relationship, then please, please, please take extra precautions. So one of the things you can do is say, can you show me your closing statement? You know, show me your closing statement. Show me your tax bill, your paid tax bill. Show me something that proves, other than your ID, that you are the owner of this. Look to see that the ID matches the address on where the tax assessor is sending the tax bill, and take the one extra step of using the good old snail mail United States Postal Service, because what we've found is all of these transactions are utilizing the fact that we have become electronic. They're creating fake Outlook and Gmail and other email addresses that are just like owner's first name dot last name at outlook.com to make it have some legitimacy. And the phone numbers have thus far all been out of state, but not to say that they couldn't, create an in-state phone number very easily. Mail the listing agreement to the address on record for taxes. Just say, it was a pleasure chatting with you on the phone, and I look forward to selling your land. Here's a copy of your fully executed listing agreement. And if you get a call in 5 or 6 days from some person saying, who are you? And I am not selling my land, contact the department and let's try to catch those criminals. Certainly contact your broker, notify your broker right away, and then please contact the department, because we need to make Arizona an inhospitable place for them to do this kind of crime. Fix and flips. So in the cooperation, Governor Hobbs puts forth a lot of effort to put the cabinet together and make sure that we are working interagency together to best represent the people of Arizona. So we're also working with the Registrar of Contractors on the handyman exemption law. we had a fix and flip come in and a addition was put onto the house. You could see it just on Google Maps, like, hey, that part of the house didn't exist before this person owned it. It didn't take rocket science. It was not like the hardest case for the investigator to prove. And on the seller's property disclosure statement, the seller said, no, no work done here. And the licensee didn't know, and the addition didn't have a foundation. And Phoenix had its first monsoon storm, and the fact that the addition had no foundation became very, very apparent. It was over $100,000 in damages that this young couple who bought the house had to incur. The Registrar of Contractors deemed that because the seller lied on the seller's property disclosure statement, it was fraud, and they're pursuing a felony too. So never, ever, ever has it been so important that you express to the seller the importance that they disclose everything that they know about the house to the best and the most truthful of their abilities. I was able to clear the licensees though. The licensees didn't have a duty to investigate, and they were told what they were told, and they marketed what they were told. So the licensees were not in trouble in that case, but protect your sellers and make sure they understand you'd rather deal with the elephant in the room than get into some serious trouble. For those of you who know Mandy Neat, anybody in here know Mandy? I know she comes up here and teaches. Mandy has just accepted the position of Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Real Estate. She starts on May 30th. She will be tasked with outreach. I have done over 80 outreach meetings with stakeholders in my 90 days, and I'd very much like to divide that. Not that I don't love meeting with everybody, but it's a lot, and there's still a lot of work to get done. So Mandy will be the Deputy Commissioner in charge of process improvement and outreach. She'll be developing educational opportunities for licensees. We want to make the auditing process completely transparent. We do not want your brokerage to be audited and you not understand what we're looking for. We want to create an opportunity for you to self-audit, self-report once you clearly know what we are looking for, and then we want to hold you harmless of those things that didn't actually hurt the public, but where you weren't necessarily compliance with statute and rule. The current Deputy Commissioner, Jim Knupp, is absolutely staying with the department. He is in charge of policy, and we have a big IT change coming. So for those that don't know, my CRM, my information technology system, was written 26 years ago in C#. It's a sexy beast. It prohibits us from a lot of the improvements that we would like to make for the industry and for licensees. And so this year we are absorbing the cost of a business analyst to find out what we need for now and what we need for the future to best take care of all of our licensees. We see you as our customers, and we want to provide the best possible customer service. We are anticipating in the budget year of 25 that we will have to ask for approximately $3.5 to $4 million to bring in a full new information technology system for the Department of Real Estate that will be commercially supported, because Kevin Good, who's been with the department for 26 years and coded our IT system, has done the shot across the bow and said, I'm winding down and I'll be retiring soon, and you need to figure something else out. So I am told that if anything happens to Kevin Good before we go on commercial software, that I will look something like a 1980s Department of Transportation motor vehicles. We are now seeing C536 at window 4. So as I'm not looking forward to that, I feed Kevin oatmeal and vegetable crudita. No, I'm kidding. We understand the urgency. We understand what needs to be done, and we want to make sure there's no disruption to you and your license renewals and the statutory changes that have to be updated in our system and everything else that goes on at the Department of Real Estate. Mandy Neat. She will be coming on and going through the entire audit procedure and investigative procedure, making sure that the staff at the Department of Real Estate understand what it is that you do, how it should be done, and the audit process is going to look significantly different for a residential brokerage and for property management brokerages than it does today. So when we make the changes, we'll roll out a whole lot of outreach and education, welcome you guys to come into the department or join us on Zooms. We'll have them regularly scheduled, and then in the following quarter, we're going to start the enforcement and put the new rules into place. So we really do want to do outreach education first, give everybody the opportunities that they need to make sure they're in full compliance, and then we will roll with it. We're also looking at Title 32, Chapter 20. I have some statutes that say things like if you hold a CE class outside of the state lines, you have to send me a videotape. But I am assured that I don't have a VHS player, so don't really know what that looks like. I guess if I get a videotape, I take my purchase card and I go to Goodwill and Savers and try to find somebody's old VHS player. I'm not really sure what I would do with that. But there's just revisions that need to be done. A lot of them are technical revisions. We will be asking for legislation that helps us better regulate teams. We understand that the model can be 8,000 people at a brokerage with a lot of teams that are operating as businesses underneath there. I would very much like to have a scalpel and not a nuclear warhead in addressing that. So I'd like to address the problems in the industry exactly where the problems lie. And other than that, the department is here to serve all of you. I know how hard it is. I know you juggle many things. I know that you guys are your own marketing departments, you're your own finance and accounting departments, you're doing your transactions and you're taking care of clients and making sure your pipeline is full. I know what the job is. I know how very hard the job is. I am determined that this is a Department of Real Estate that doesn't add any extra burdens upon you, that we do not have to do so in order to regulate and make it a safe industry. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Susan. We appreciate having you here today. Next up, we have Michelle Lind of the Council of Arizona Realtors. Michelle, come on up.
So are we all excited about our new commissioner? Yeah, absolutely. The Arizona Realtors are certainly excited that Susan Nicolson was appointed by the governor to serve in this role. And although we are sad to see Mandy Neat, who is our current Arizona Realtors treasurer, leave the Realtor Association, we know that they're going to do amazing things for the industry at the department. So she's a tough act to follow. So let's see, where do I? There we go. So let me just start off by reminding you who the Arizona Realtors are and what we do. The Arizona Realtors is the largest trade association in the state of Arizona with over 55,000 members. Our members, like you, are active real estate licensees in all areas of practice: residential, commercial, vacant land, property management. We advocate for protecting private property rights and for balancing laws and regulations that may injure property owners. We're the largest political action committee in the state, and we work to enhance your ability to represent your clients with integrity and competency. And we do that with our forms and with technology tools and professional standards and the information that we provide. And we only can do this because of all the people, all the members that volunteer their time. And I know that there are many members here that have volunteered their time at the association. Our immediate past president here, Gary Nelson. We have Paula Montoffer, of course, she ran off to Georgia. Judy Jackson sits on our executive committee this year. Who else? Jackie Kellogg, you've served on some committees. Who else has served around here? That's right, Judy. So without all of you, we couldn't do that without our members. Huh? Dusty. Oh, that's right, Dusty. Where's Dusty? Yes, Dusty Roden. Yes, absolutely. So just to briefly, for those of you that may not know me, my name's Michelle Lind. I have represented the association for over 30 years now. I represented them for about 8 years, was outside counsel when I was in private practice. I came in as general counsel, served for general counsel from like 1999 to 2012. In 2012, I stepped up as and served as CEO until last April. And now I've stepped aside and now I serve the Association of Counsel. So I have been around the association for the vast majority of my, my professional life. And the old adage comes to mind when I think about real estate over the last 30 years is that the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I think that that's true about real estate, about the real estate industry. It's always changing, and that's what makes real estate interesting, and that's what makes it challenging. And changes can be due to the law, they can be due to the market, they can be due to technology, they can just be due to the political atmosphere in the state. And what I have on this slide are just a few of the examples of, I think, what were pretty major changes in the last 20 years. The buyer advisory came out in 2002. That was when the Department of Real Estate I was on a work group with Tom Fannin, and the Department of Real Estate wanted to impose an obligation on real estate agents to verify all the information in a transaction. As you heard Commissioner Nicolson say, you don't have an obligation to do that. But one of the reasons that you don't have that obligation is because we propose to come up with a buyer advisory to allow the buyer the information that the buyer needs to verify the information. The cure period came into the contract in 2005. And then about in 2006, we started fighting with the homeowners associations about for sale signs, open house signs, for rent signs, cost of them, cost of fees. Then we went into the short sales and the REOs and the mortgage fraud and deficiency years of 2007 to about 2011, which resulted in Dodd-Frank and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and changes in our financing addendum. In 2017, we changed the contract to take out the seller warranties for 20 plus years. The seller had warranted, those that you've been in business for a long time, you know that they sell it, that everything was going to be in working condition. And even when I started practicing it, that the roof had no known leaks. But now the contract in 2017 went as is. And then technology with solar leases. We had an increase in wire fraud. Then we had some concerns about sellers in their homes with surveillance equipment and how we do that. Then we went into the years of low inventory and multiple offers and escalation clauses and love letters. All of those things, and so we've kind of come out. But from those multiple offers, then we got some legislation. But every time the market changes, as you can see, the association has reacted with either changes in forms, providing information, or going down to the legislature and making changes at the legislature to address the problem. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. And some things don't change. The basics of a real estate transaction stay the same. It's the same type of transaction that was 30, 40 years ago. Real estate continues to be the cornerstone of this economy. And a home remains the largest financial investment that most people ever make. And many real estate laws remain constant. The statute of frauds. Y'all know what the statute of frauds says, right? That every contract for the sale of real property has to be in writing and signed by the parties to be charged. Husband and wife both have to sign, and any addendums or modifications of that contract have to be signed. Well, the statute of frauds was enacted in 1677 by the English Parliament, and it was called the Act for Prevention of Frauds and Perjuries. I don't think the statute of frauds is going to change after 300 and some years. So remember to get everybody's signatures. Antitrust. The Sherman Antitrust Act was enacted in 1890. It was aimed at preserving free and unfettered competition in trade. And it is governed by the Federal Trade Commission. Although it was enacted in 1890, antitrust is a big issue in this industry and never has been a bigger issue in this industry than it is today. The Federal Trade Commission has made it clear that antitrust enforcement will not be slowing down. You've all heard the reports of the issues with the Federal Trade Commission and the National Association of Realtors and various class action lawsuits alleging antitrust against the National Association of Realtors and various brokerage firms and MLSs. So that's not going to change. So remember, antitrust has been around forever, but you still have to comply with those laws. Agency and fiduciary duty. The agency and fiduciary duty requirements come primarily from court-made law in Arizona. And interestingly enough, most of those court cases that started talking about an agent's fiduciary duty to their client were cases in which the agent sued their client for a commission. And then the court started looking at those duties. So agency and fiduciary duty obviously remains an issue. Today, make sure you use your agency forms, make sure you disclose your agency, make sure that you use the consent to limited representation form if you are involved in a dual agency situation, because if there's ever a claim, the first question a lawyer is going to ask you is who did you represent? The Department of Real Estate, established in 1921, obviously it's not going to go away. We have a new commissioner. We just heard from Susan Nicolson. So the department will be here, but obviously we're going to see some changes from the department. Susan Nicolson, Commissioner, I got to remember to say Commissioner Nicolson right now, not instead of calling Susan all the time. Commissioner Nicolson also talked about fair housing, and fair housing was, the law was passed 55 years ago, 1968, and then of course amended in 1988 to add familial status and handicap and disability. But that is a current issue today. The commissioner talked about it today, and the Arizona Realtors has a new fair housing advisory form that is voluntary for use. If you haven't seen it, check the website. It's an excellent form. RESPA is also on there. That was passed in 1974. It was effective in 1975, and Commissioner Nicolson talked about RESPA as well. It is an old law. It has not been changed, but And the law is the same, that you cannot get kickbacks from settlement service providers, to escrow companies, title companies, lenders, those sort of things. And a buyer can't be required to buy title insurance as a condition of buying the property from a particular title insurance company. It is now enforced by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau rather than HUD. It was originally enforced by HUD. And then the final, staying the same, is a disclosure. Disclosure is still one of the biggest claims and biggest issues we have in our industry. That came out of a 1986 case called Hill versus Jones, and that's just the Hill versus Jones case. But in that case, the seller did not disclose that there had been past termite infestation in the property. And when the buyer moved in, they found evidence of pretty significant termite infestation. And right now, I mean, today we think, well, of course, they have an obligation to disclose, but not in 1986. This case went up to the higher court because it was really caveat emptor at that time, let the buyer beware. But the court changed the laws. So again, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So what are the current issues that we're seeing, the changes that we're seeing on the horizon? First, of course, is the market, right? We've got changes in the market with the increasing interest rates. And with these changes in the market, it really increases the importance of you educating and preparing your clients. Managing your clients' expectations is probably the best risk management tool that you have. Educating them, getting to know them, and assisting them. Assisting your buyer with due diligence, assisting your buyer with verifying questionable information, documenting the transaction, and of course, communication. Please. Texting is great, but texting is to like confirm an appointment or to say, I'll call you right back, or that sort of. Texting is not the way to handle an issue that you have in a transaction or try to settle some sort of dispute. So communicate. Try to use the old-fashioned, just pick up the telephone. I know the telephones don't look like this anymore, but I'm old. That's the way they used to look. So communication, so very important. Deed fraud, I won't go into that because the commissioner went into that, but she is absolutely correct. There was a recent report from the Secret Service Cybercrimes Investigations talking about the sharp increase in this kind of fraud. And I don't believe that Commissioner Nicolson mentioned that the types of properties that are most vulnerable to deed fraud are vacant and unoccupied properties. So especially if you have a vacant or an unoccupied property, you have a seller that's not here, out of state, they want to list it low, they want a quick sale for, a cash buyer, all red flags. Do the things that Commissioner said to do to verify their identity. Water is, if you read the news, we're talking about the Arizona water supply all over the place, of course, with the Colorado River water supply, but water supply in other areas as well. I mean, some areas, as you know, have hauled water, have wells, all different. There's about 400, and there's also about 400 private water companies in the state of Arizona. So make sure that your buyer, if there's any doubt, make sure your buyer verifies the water, and there's information on the buyer advisory on how they can do that. And then attainable housing, affordable housing, that's a huge issue. Tad talked about the charity that you all have established. Matt Conarelli and myself were involved with the a legislative committee that met, had a series of meetings. We did research on what we can do legislatively to make more, and I call it attainable housing. Affordable housing almost has kind of a stigma to it these days, it's just like we need attainable housing for our working workforce, for our kids, so that it has to be attainable. So we are working on that legislatively. And Tad did mention your housing fund, but I do want to mention the Arizona Housing Fund, which is a statewide housing fund that sounds like your fund is mirrored through the Arizona Housing Fund. Because homelessness and low-income housing is so incredibly important. These are the forms for the Arizona Housing Fund for the statewide program. We provide grants. I'm on the advisory committee for the Arizona Housing Fund. We provide grants for nonprofits to help them acquire the funds to build and operate supportive, permanent, low income and working poor housing to reduce homelessness and to assist in our housing crisis. And last year, through the Arizona Housing Fund, we made $850,000 in grants. It's a statewide program. One of the grants, actually, I was invited to it was a affordable housing groundbreaking in Chino Valley today. And I said, no, I'm going to be in Flagstaff. So it is a statewide program. And our fund is back up to, I believe, over 700,000. We have 6 more grant applications that we will be reviewing at the end of the month. And one of the grant applications is actually from Flagstaff. It's the Housing Solutions of Northern Arizona that has applied for a grant, as well as Native American Connections. So the Arizona Housing Fund is working it's going to take a village, right? It's going to take us all to deal with the housing crisis in the state. More hot issues, forms. I can't ever go talk it to any group without talking about our forms. We have over 70 forms, and they get revised regularly. Of course, in October of last year, we revised the buyer inspection notice and seller response form and the purchase contract to allow the buyer the option to, after they do their inspection and specify their items disapproved, to either cancel, ask the seller to repair the items, or to address the items through an addendum with a credit, buy down interest rate, whatever they want to ask for. The thing that I would like to make sure that you all understand is that if the buyer wants to address them with a credit, you still have to identify your items disapproved. Regardless of what the buyer's election is, you identify the items disapproved. As a listing agent, if you get it back and they have not identified the items disapproved, you issue a cure notice. If they don't get it done in 3 days, then you cancel the transaction. The SBDS was revised pretty significantly, and it does have some pretty detailed information on what work has been done on the property, the contractors, their name, their license number, and the scope of work. But the most exciting thing about the SBDS is the new electronic breeze that your sellers can use to fill out your seller's property disclosure statement. Has everybody used that yet? Is it working pretty good? Yeah, I think it's an excellent tool. We do have a couple of more contracts. Actually, there's a risk management committee today, and if they get approved, they'll be going to the executive committee in June for approval. One is a change to the, I'm not gonna say change, a clarification to the purchase contract. No worries, all it's going to do is clarify that the buyer has to identify the items disapproved regardless of their election. And if they do not, the seller has to issue a cure notice. So assuming that that goes through, that's, that will end, that clarification will end any debate. The buyer contingency addendum, which is the addendum that you use if the buyer has a house to sell before they can close on your seller's property, has been substantially revamped. It is a much better form than it was before. It's much more user-friendly. It's much clearer. And it also gives the buyer the opportunity to waive the contingency if the buyer's transaction doesn't close on time, which it did not do that before. We have the additional clause addendum that will be coming out. That will just add the wholesaler disclosure that is now required by law. The multiple offer multiple offer form and multiple counter offer form will be coming out. And the only change on that is just to make it clear that the buyer or seller, whoever is doing it, to make it a contract has to sign both the multiple counteroffer form and the contract, because again, that had been an issue. So assuming all goes well while I'm here today at the Risk Management Committee, those will be going to the Executive Committee, and those you'll see those forms out in July. Claims and complaints, and I won't spend much time on claims and complaints because you all, claims and complaints, the vast majority of the claims and complaints has not changed. It's property condition. Now, we had a big spike in property condition claims, especially after the multiple offer waiving the inspection period, escalation clause time. Then the claims really spiked up. My friends who, do litigation and defense work were, they were in tall cotton, that was, I have talked to them. Most of those claims have kind of worked their way, the waiving the inspection, but it does show how much liability results from having your buyer waive inspection because the claims just really spiked. But talked to Rick Mack and some of the other defense lawyers and asked them, are there any new claims, any types of claims? And they said, nope, they're just pretty much property condition claims. So document, help your buyer, do all the things that you need to do to make sure that your buyer knows, the property before they sell it. And then just as I close out, I want to talk about a world without ADRE. And this is something that I thought about several years ago. I was listening to a TED Talk, and the TED Talk was a world without, and I even can't even remember what the world was about. What was that? A world without. But then I started really thinking about what would our industry look like if we didn't have the Arizona Realtors, if we did not have that. We came out with this little booklet. I think probably most of you have seen it. But without the Arizona Realtors, you wouldn't have the standardized forms. We're one of the few states in the nation that has standardized forms. What that means is every time you did a cross sale, you're going to have to read that form every single bit, but a boilerplate, and you're going to have to do it every time. And you're going to have to keep your forms updated. So it's a huge risk management feature that we have at the association. Without the Arizona Realtors, Arizona could have real estate transfer tax. In 2008, we ran a proposition, got it on the ballot to prohibit real estate transfer taxes in the state of Arizona. Talk to some of your peers in New Mexico and ask them how much their transfer tax is. It's huge. It's right. It's huge. So without us taking that action, we could have a transfer tax. In 2018, we ran another initiative to prohibit professional services taxes. Talk to some of your peers in states that have a professional service tax on your commission, in addition to the income tax that you already paid. We ran an initiative to get that on the ballot and change the Constitution. And one that's not up there is an initiative that we ran in 1963 to do what? Can anyone tell me what we did in 63? That's right. Article 26 of the Arizona Constitution allow real estate agents to fill out their own contracts. But without the Arizona Realtors, we could still be fighting with the Homeowners Association. Anti-deficiency law protection could have gone away. The use of nicknames on your, if you're Jacqueline and you go by Jackie, we had a little fight on whether you could actually use Jackie, or you would have to put Jacqueline in all your advertising. And then real estate could have been halted during the pandemic. And it was in some states. You could have more expensive business tools. We talked about Breeze. How many people here have used the tech helpline? Yeah. How did it work? You can call the tech helpline for any technology problem, related or unrelated to real estate, for free as many times as you want, and get help with any of your tech tools. Photify is a great tool to putting together your flyers. Of course, our transaction desk, single sign-on. And if you do any kind of commercial, we have a great deal on the commercial air contracts, much less expensive. You can tell I put this together. That's right, Rombauer, yeah, exactly. But we do spend a lot of time on trying to get information and education out. We do a lot of remote education, as you know, so that you can get great education without leaving Flagstaff and driving to hot Phoenix as we're getting there. If you haven't looked at the Mac in the Minute and the Title Talk with Kristen Mack does go into deed fraud. There's a couple of, she's done a couple of videos on deed fraud. So if you're interested in that, as well as our certifications. So the Arizona Realtors is here to assist you. If you need help, if you need support, if you have questions, just call us, email us. I promise you, someone will answer right away. And if we don't have the answer, we'll make sure to get you to the person, the right person to get you those answers. And in conclusion, I just wanted to let you know that I have started a blog since I have of Counsel, and I plan to continue that blog. So if you haven't taken a look at the blog, please do. And And you can also refer back, I just finished a contract series, so if you missed some of the contract series, you can go back to the blog and read those articles. And if I can figure out Kindle Create, and I'm this close to figuring it out, the 4th edition of my book, Arizona Real Estate, A Professional Laws of a Guide to Law and Practice, should be available within the next month or so. So hopefully that it's been updated significantly. There's been a lot of changes in the industry in the last 6 years. So with that, unless you have any questions for me, I want to thank you so very much for allowing me to come up to Flagstaff and chat with you today. So thank you. You had a question?
I was just curious, what are like some of the changes that you're seeing for the attainable housing taking place?
Well, some of the changes that we're seeing with attainable housing, on the legislative level, they're working on, because you have to work with the home builders, right? So some zoning, zoning issues, some requirements on new subdivisions to have a certain amount. And so legislatively, it's a very thin line, right? You want to promote attainable housing, but you also don't want to, free enterprise and the home builders. So we're seeing a lot of that. On the permanent supportive housing, what we're seeing is a lot of conversions of existing properties, hotels, other properties that are there that are not being used, that they can actually convert into small apartments. And if you've never had an opportunity to, when I say supportive housing, what they do is so that it's like they have apartments. I've toured them, and they have apartments, but they have in the lobby, they also have staff there. And they try to focus on the demographic, whether it's elderly, whether it's veterans, if it's someone with people with substance abuse, mental health issues, but have support services for them within the housing. But when you go up to the apartments, they're just like nice small apartments. So those are the things that I'm seeing. Yeah.
Along those lines, I spoke to a tax credit developer maybe a year ago or so, and he told me that one of the challenges for a community like Flagstaff to get tax credit housing is that the state has a limitation of how often a particular zip code can be approved for a tax credit project. So a community like Flagstaff, that within the city limits, we only have basically 3 zip codes.
Right.
Okay. It really creates a problem as far as us being able to apply for and get a tax credit project approved. And as you probably well know, we have probably one of the biggest crises of affordability here in Flagstaff compared to the rest of the state. So I don't know what AAR can do in terms of lobbying the state to try to modify that rule, but
the issue is that tax credits are limited the state limits certain amount of tax credits per zip code. And of course, Flagstaff has just a few zip codes. What I will do is let me bring that back to Matt. I know that he's been working he's working really hard on this issue, and see if that's something that has come up in their legislative discussions. And the bill keeps changing, as you know how, there's 2 things you don't want to see made, right? Quoting Mark Twain, it's laws and sausage. So, and it's a messy, because both are very messy processes. So, all right, thank you again.
Well, that concludes our luncheon today. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Our next one is July 20th. Lawrence Young via Zoom will be here. Please come.